Welcome to Millennial Musings, everyone. I am Isabella.
And I'm Gladys, and we are just two opinionated millennials who sometimes make dumb mistakes. And what we want to do here is share our experiences and offer the advice that we wish we had received.
Disclaimer, we are not therapists or life coaches, and we have no actual criteria to be giving advice whatsoever. But we could be a new bestie or big sister. So just sit back, grab a cup of coffee or tea, and get ready for some millennial musings.
How have you been?
How have I been? Well, my body is failing me.
Oh, God.
Quite suitable. Well, in relation to today's theme, my female reproductive system is causing me pain because it's that time of the month.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but otherwise, I'm just sitting here with my hot water bottle, so I'm all cozied up. How are you?
I am exhausted. It's Friday now. I just had such a busy week. You know when you have your work, your day-to-day job, work, and then after a day's work, okay, now I still won't be able to relax because I still have so much to do. That's how I felt every single day of this week, where I was like, okay, now I have at least another 5 hours of work ahead of me. And it's fun things. It's like writing, finishing a blog post, doing stuff for the podcast and everything. But I just feel like I haven't really had the time to sit down and chill at all. So yeah, it's currently a little bit past 5 p.m. So after this, I am just sitting down with a blanket and a book, and or I might watch the Robbie Williams documentary on Netflix because I've been meaning to do that as well. But yeah, I am chilling this weekend. I cannot wait.
Much needed chill. Yeah, I wish I could say the same. I do know how you feel though. It's not really, well, obviously I'm doing the podcast work as well after work, but then I just feel like the flat has been an ongoing project. There's so much to, even though the renovations are basically done, they have to come one more time for fixing something on the floor. But it's just tidying everything up. I feel like I've moved flat. I keep moving stuff out of boxes and reorganizing drawers, and it's just not ending. And then tomorrow's exciting because we're going to IKEA, and I love going to IKEA, but it's just still always something to do, and I just want to lie down for a few hours in a row.
Yeah, I know. I hope you get to do that at some point, but not now.
Not now.
We have work to do.
Yes.
So we are still on our shit, I'm a woman theme. And today we will discuss the big question: why is everyone obsessed with having children or not having children?
Again, a big one, following up on last week's episode. But yeah, last week we talked about marriage, our thoughts on marriage. And I think this is quite a nice follow-up because let's say you find a partner, right? You decide they are your one. You get married or you don't get married, but either way, you decide you want to stay with that person, and then you've been together for a while. And that's when it usually starts. People will ask eventually, so when are you going to have children? And I think before we get into this, what I want to make clear is that I'm not criticizing or judging people who have or who don't have children. I couldn't care less what other people are doing. What I'm criticizing is the judgment that comes with either decision, like having children or not having them. And of course, also the fact that it's just such a societal, normalized expectation of any couple to have children eventually.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I mean, this is just our personal opinion and also our personal thoughts at this moment in time. So that doesn't mean that, we'll always feel this way or that will never change. And obviously also we currently, neither of us have children, so we don't have any experience there. And also I'm saying this because I feel like this is a topic that will most likely always offend someone, no matter what you say. But yes, like you said, that's not what we're trying to do. We're merely just discussing the societal pressure around it and everything. And I do have a very strong view on it, for also just from my own experience and opinions. So yeah, but that is in no way judging people who feel differently. That's just what I wanted to say.
Yes. And, I'm not going to lie, I struggled also with like sorting my thoughts for this episode. One reason is because of what you just said. To many people, this is such a sore subject and it can be quite a painful subject. And I really want to respect this. And the other reason I struggled is I'm just not 100% sure how I feel about it. Like, I can imagine myself having children one day. I would say maybe more than not, but that can change from week to week. Um, but I'm not in a hurry at all. Like, I don't feel any maternal urge, and I'm not even sure if I want to do it the biological way. Like, I can see myself more as someone who adopts a child or children instead of being pregnant. And I've mentioned my interest in adopting every now and again, like just in a quick comment, not as a decision made to some people. And you get so many opinions on this. And in general, people's opinions about how and if and when other people should have children are so, so, so strong. And I just don't get why.
No, I mean, I guess, when we look at it from a societal point of view, I guess it is arguably the biggest step that you can ever take in life. And I do think that, I do think that it is the biggest thing. And I do also think that having children, hopefully, really does. I do believe that love for a child is just something that just transcends every other emotion, every other kind of love. I 100% believe that. So probably because it is such a big thing. And also, of course, because that's kind of what we're all about as humans and creatures. So I get that it is a big thing, but yeah, I do also feel like we should have evolved a little bit more by now in terms of how people still judge literally everyone, no matter what you decide to do.
Yeah, that's true. But okay, so there are a lot of people on the planet, too many people at this point, I think. We have never had a population as high as this, so there's not a need to have children anymore. It's not like you need to have a child. You don't need a child to make humanity move on or to have a good workforce or whatever. You don't need a child to improve society, is what I'm trying to say, which in my opinion makes it more of a lifestyle, not lifestyle, but how do you want to live your life kind of choice. And either way, I think, like you said, it's perfectly fine. I'm like Bella in Twilight here. I'm Switzerland. I also believe that the love between a mother or father or parent and a child can just be the most intense and beautiful thing. But I also believe that if you don't have children, you're not selfish, you're not weird, and your own valid reasons are enough, and you shouldn't have to explain it to people. But to me, it feels like, and I said that to you before, there's almost like a rivalry going on between people who have children or really want children and then the people who don't want children. From the outside, it seems to me as if people are trying to convince each other to change their minds to their opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Because so you're Switzerland. So we're maybe one person short who would be on the other side of this spectrum. But I'll just tell you why I do not want children. I actually think more than, and this might be the first controversial thing already, I think, when you think about reasons to have them, of course, people can have millions of different reasons why to have children. But I think in essence, and this is what I personally feel, but I think that it should be a decision that you make because at the end of the day, no matter what else is going on, you have a burning wish for it, because it is something that you want with every part of your body, mind, and heart. And that is, I think, what children deserve. I think children deserve to come into the world that way. And I don't have that. I just do not have that. If I think about my own life in the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I think, okay, I want to be more financially comfortable. I would love to get to a place where I can do what I love to do full time, where I can be picky about the work I do. That would be the dream. I want to maybe live in another area of London. I want to travel. I want to enjoy life. I want to maybe get married and have more cats, but children are just nowhere on that list. And I don't have anything against children. When my friends have children, I love it. I cry every time one of my close friends have a child. And it is something that I read once, but it's basically like, when you care about your friends so much, it's just so like, it's so overwhelming when they then have a child and you just immediately love that child as well, just because you love the parents so much, I feel like. So I love babies. I love hanging out with children, but also every time I do, that's just extra proof for me. That just confirms that I don't want my life to be that.
Yes, and I totally get that. And I think that's a completely valid reason. And I think that's you actually put it in such a great way. Like, I think you really should only have a child if you are behind it and you want to give it your all. Because otherwise, I mean, yeah, things can turn sour quickly for yourself, I think. I actually, let me get right to this, because I told you about a nice little Twitter post that I have read when I was doing some research for this. And well, it's not Twitter anymore, is it? It's X. But
I refuse to say that. I refuse.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense to me. So that post is from 2022, and it was written by a guy called Shane Morris, and it went viral. He's not, I don't think, as far as I know, that he's a famous person or anything. I think he has like 4,000 followers, or maybe that is a lot on X. I don't know. But his Twitter bio, just so you know who I'm talking about here, reads: the host of Colson Center's Upstream podcast. He's a writer, a Reformed Christian, a husband and a father, a Florida man. And if I can't scuba, what's this all been about? Yeah. So he looks like he's in his 30s. So I think from the looks of it, he's a millennial. And he wrote the following, or he posted the following tweet. How do you actually call it? He posted the following X. I don't know.
I don't know what they call it now.
I don't know. But what he said is, millennials who are very cavalier about not having children are in for a shock when they enter their 40s and realize life is only half over. What do you do at that point? Keep trying to be sexy and have fun? I expect to see a lot of sadness and confusion about what to do at that point. Without the natural connections and belonging that literally emerge from marriage and fertility, the latter years become very cold and lonely. Those Friendsgivings will get old quickly. And I mean, that's a big opinion. And it got a lot of reaction from everyone who doesn't want children. And the reason, we can get into this in a second, but the reason I wanted to mention that post is because, as neutral as I am about this topic, I do believe millennials and also Gen Z are often being judged or like get a harsh reaction for not wanting children and for being so open and honest about it. And I think this is like quite a good example.
I mean, I knew when you read that bio, and I heard that he was proud to be from Florida, I knew that we were in for a ride.
Oh, yeah. But like, I mean, so what I thought about this is, why is he mentioning fertility? Like, not everyone can have children. This is such a horrible thing to say. And we will get into this in more detail probably as well. But also, this really shows an example of, and maybe it's a bit an extreme example, but like voluntarily child-free people are just being seen as, oh, you just want to stay sexy and party on and like have your little teenage life. I don't think that's absolutely not the case. Like, I think the judgment is quite hard on them, and I think people should think about the more pressing issues that are going on around the world, which actually make people not want to have children, or like deciding. So I actually read an article from The Guardian that said there are millennials that do want children, but they decide not to have children because of things like the cost of living crisis, the unaffordable housing, really expensive childcare costs, the climate emergency, on top of like salaries that don't rise like inflation does. And then I ended up on a website that did a calculation of how much it costs to raise a child in the UK. The website is called the Child Poverty Group account, and it was done in November 2022. So these calculations include the money spent, including housing, childcare costs, as well as like basic needs. How much do you think it costs to have a child, Class?
I don't know. Like there's the thing that people always say that it's basically the price of a house, but I don't know if that's true.
I actually think I was quite surprised when I read it, because I thought it's going to be more in a way. It's a lot of money, don't get me wrong. It is up until the age of 18 years old, and it's 190, the average is 190k, which is a lot of money. 190k is a lot of money. Imagine trying to save that up right now.
Yeah, and if I had it, I know who I would want to spend it on, and it's not children.
Yeah, so that's about £10,500 pounds a year, which I just couldn't afford with my salary right now.
No.
And then the other thing is childcare costs are so high. So people, on the one hand, there's a big group of people that really want you to have children, but then there's not enough support. Like, it's just the support you can get to raise a child is just really hard, because, and you said that in last week's episode as well, if both parents work, but one salary might literally just be enough to pay the childcare costs, you might decide to not go to work, because you might as well watch the child then, instead of just working to pay for childcare.
Yeah. Yeah, so I actually had a conversation after last week's episode with a friend of mine who recently had a baby boy. But first, I want to say, in reaction to that tweet from Florida Man.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
That this is such a thing where I'm like, and this is a thing worldwide, but I think in the US more than maybe anywhere, that idea of like, you need to have children, but then there is absolutely nothing in place to actually take care of said children. You know, I think the social benefits in the US are shit. The abortion laws are shit. Like, so it's all like, oh, you need to have children, but then once they're, and we actually will forbid you to not have children, but then once the children are there, we will not do anything, and we don't care about them at all. And that just does not make sense to me.
No, not at all. I was going to say the same, because, yeah, you're not allowed to handle the situation however you want to handle it, but then then you have your child, and then you get zero support on it, and no one cares.
Yeah. So I had this conversation with my friend, and so she had her son earlier this year, and she said, so the plan was, so she's a teacher. She's always worked as a teacher, or at least these past couple of years. And so she said the plan was for the baby to go to daycare from the 1st of September, which is like the start of the school year. So that's also when she would have started working again. And she just said, we just decided no, that this just did not feel right. Because, and this is a big thing, I think, for many people in Belgium, and I think honestly this is ridiculous. In Belgium, you get 3 months of maternal leave. 3 months, which is nothing. So my friend was like, I did not feel comfortable going back to work and basically taking care of other children when my own 3-month-old baby still requires so much care himself. And I completely understand. Like, I completely understand not being comfortable. And again, of course, this is something that people will have many different opinions about, but I completely understand that you don't feel comfortable sending a 3-month-old baby to a daycare, to strangers, basically. And in Belgium also, paternity leave it was 10 days. Apparently it is now 20, which is still not a lot. That's basically the system saying, you don't need to be in that child's life. You're the man. Nobody cares about you, which I think is very sad. But yeah, then we also just spoke about, of course, not everyone is in a situation to do that. Single parents, for example, they don't have that luxury in a way that you can live off of one salary and then another person stays home. Usually they will have to go to work. But then, yes, because I also read an article that says that actually a lot of people who are staying at home would like to go to work, but because childcare, like you said, is so expensive, it basically wouldn't make sense for them to go to work because almost their entire salary would go towards childcare. But then, of course, the opposite can also be the case where maybe a parent does want to stay at home, but then that's not financially an option. So it is such a case by case thing. But what I did find interesting, because I actually started Googling this a little bit, is that the number, so in heterosexual couples, the number of stay-at-home dads has doubled since the 70s, which I actually think is very nice. And in the US, apparently in the US, it's almost 1 in 5 stay-at-home parents is the dad. Because personally, I think I have only seen that on New Girl. I think that's literally the only situation where I've ever seen a stay-at-home dad. Oh, and I think there was a couple, Elizabeth and Andre, on 90 Day Fiancé.
I'm just thinking if I've seen it anywhere. I think there's a show called Parents. It's with the actress that played Blake in Gossip Girl. Blair, sorry, not Blake. Blair.
Blake is the other one.
Yeah, no, Blair. It's with her, and there's like 2 single dads though. They're not choosing to stay at home. I think they just got left by their wives or wife died or something. But no, I haven't heard much about this. And then the other thing is, if one person just has to stay at home because it just wouldn't make sense to pay the whole salary for childcare, that person loses out on focus on their career if they really are someone who wants to build one. And yeah, we said that in the last episode as well. It's often the woman who stays at home and then becomes the main carer and then has to step back from work a bit. And that can just, again, like we said, cause some imbalance should the marriage or relationship not really work out.
No, and that's also why last week I said, but then afterwards I was like, did I speak too much from like my own very unnuanced personal opinion as a childless person? But then, yeah, I don't know. For me personally, yes, the financial dependency would be a factor, but then I also don't want children, so I also don't know what it's like to want to be with your child, which I also think makes perfect sense. But yeah. And I do have to say, I think it's really good in the well, of course, again, I can't judge this if it's actually good, but compared to Belgium, like I said, 3 months in Belgium, and if you decide to take a bit more leave before the baby comes, then that gets deducted from the 3 months, so then you get even less, basically. But in the UK, I'm not 100% sure how it works, but you can take up to a year. I think it's not 100% paid. But then what I really like is that you can divide it between the 2 parents, so that you can be like, oh, okay, I'll take 8 months and you take 4, or we both take 6 months or something. I really like that. And according to my hairdresser, they recently changed that as well, that if you're a gay couple and you adopt or you go via surrogacy, for example, that you also get that, which again, before, if you're two dads, it was just you just both got 2 weeks. So then basically there's no parent who gets any proper time with the child. But yeah, they changed that apparently. So that's good. I would say that was necessary.
Oh yeah, it is. And I mean, there's still some countries where it's wild with the maternity leave. I mean, the US, how much do you get? I think 6 weeks, which is nothing. And I follow this Instagram couple, two women in Norway, and they just had a baby a few weeks ago, and she was just interested to see how maternity leave works in other countries, and also they're both self-employed, so they're kind of just sorting it out themselves in a way as well. But she said when she heard some answers, she said she had a tear that was like the first level tear, or however you want to call it, 1 grade tear. How do you level the tears that happen when you give birth? So the mildest one, basically. And she said 6 weeks was not enough to heal that. How is she meant to go to work if she can't sit even? Like, how can you expect that from people?
No, that's madness to me. You go through such well, like traumatic experience at the end of the day.
In a way, there's a lot happening to your body. There's a lot of hormone spikes up and down, and not everyone takes it the same way. Some might be perfectly fine, but the whole postpartum thing can be a wild ride. From what I've heard and seen and read, obviously I haven't had it.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I think definitely in many countries there's probably room for improvement. But yeah, I'm happy I had that conversation with my friend, because the main thing she said was just like, for me, it's not about wanting to go to work or not wanting to go to work. It's about believing that the child needs time to bond. And
and I mean, she said 3 months, you haven't even had a chance to get to know them properly.
No. You did say something interesting earlier, something that I definitely wanted to discuss, which was, you mentioned that some people are like, oh yeah, but you might change your minds, or people trying to change each other's mind. I think I've definitely gotten that a couple of times. I remember I had this student job or like an internship or something somewhere in Antwerp, and there was this woman who asked me if I had children, and I said, no, that's not for me, or that's not something I want. And then she went, oh, okay, so not yet. And I was like, no, that's just not for me. Children are not something I want. Okay, so just you want to wait a little bit longer. And I was like, are you hearing what I'm saying? And that is such a thing. They're like, oh, but you might change your mind, because I feel like that implies that there is one right decision that eventually everyone will come to. And it's kind of like, oh, you might have these phases where like you're not sure, but eventually you will realize that this is the right thing, because also closely related to that is the question, oh, but what if you meet someone who wants children? And I've never really understood how something that I am so certain about, because what I said earlier during the intro that this is how we feel right now, and that might change. Yes, but I meant the way we think about these things, the way we think about certain situations. But when it comes to whether or not I want this, I think I'm quite sure. And why would something that I know for certain, something that I'm so sure of, change because I meet someone who has a different idea about that? Like, that again is just saying, oh yeah, but then you will realize what the right thing to do is, and then you will eventually arrive there. And I just always think, if I don't have children and one day I regret that, let's say one day I'm like, I made the wrong decision, I should have had children, and now I feel like there's something missing in my life, I will regret that. Just me. I will be the only victim of this. If I do have children and then regret it because I got them for the wrong reason, and I know that this is a massive taboo, but it happens, then there's more victims of this. And then there's children that, were brought into the world for the wrong reasons. So I just don't understand why people don't want to accept that, or why, yeah, why they would rather have children be born as a result of the wrong reasons or societal pressure than people just living their lives.
Yeah, I'm of course currently watching Married at First Sight, the UK version, and there's this one couple, they've been getting on great, then they had a bit of trouble because she thought he's not extroverted enough, which kind of annoyed me. Anyway, they're fine now. And now they have a new issue because he said he always knew he wanted to have children. He's always seen himself as a dad. He really wants children. And she said she doesn't want children. Well, she didn't say at first, she didn't say, I don't want children. She said, I've never met anyone who made me change my mind. And she kept saying that quite a few times. And I'm like, but that's, honey, you just don't want children, and that's fine. And you can just say that. If you don't want children, there's not some magical unicorn going to come that makes you want to have children. If you don't want to have children, you don't want to have children. But if she says it like this, for him, this probably also kind of means, yeah, but maybe I am going to become that person who will change her mind. We just haven't been together for that long. But then I'm like, you just kind of, and it's going to sound hard, but I think if you know from the beginning you're not on the same page on that topic and you are a certain age, you might probably want to just call it quits and not waste your time.
Oh, 1000%. And you know how I feel about this.
Yes, I do.
Yes. Yeah. I think if you're both a maybe, or if you're both like, yes, maybe yet more yes than no, or more no than yes, then yeah, okay, I can maybe see. It would stress me out. I'm not gonna lie, it would stress me out. But I can maybe see how you then kind of just let things happen the way they happen. Because of course, literally anything can happen. It can be that you meet someone and that you're both a 100% yes, and that one of you changes their mind. That can happen. It can be that you're both a no, and then 5 years down the line, one of you is like, actually, that is something I really do want now. And then, so there's no way to prevent that from happening, no matter how you feel about it now. But I do agree with you, when you're a certain age, then I feel like there are just things that, like, if you already know that you're on completely different pages when it comes to something as fundamental, I think that's probably the only thing that you just cannot compromise on ever. Then I feel like, yeah, I mean, I personally would then feel like, okay, what's the point? Because I don't want to put so much effort into this relationship to then find out, or to then have to eventually cope with the fact that it's just not working because of that. And so when Kyron and I started dating, I made this ask, well, actually it was on my Hinge profile, so it was clear, but then I also brought that up, I think, on the date 4 or 5, and not in like a, well, actually, I don't know, I just asked him, is that something that you would want? Because he had to be okay with that for me to even go further. I just had to know that he was okay with that. If in that moment he would have been like, oh, I 100% have to be a dad one day, then that would have been it.
Yeah. And I think that makes life a little bit easier, maybe, because otherwise, like in this Married at First Sight thing, I mean, yeah, no, it's a reality TV show, but the guy seems so genuinely nice. Like he seems like such a nice guy. And I think she's more like, well, she actually did say it at us dinner party. Well, why are we not just wasting our time then? And he's like, no. But I think he just likes her so much. He's kind of a bit blinded to the issue that might come up. And I mean, he does have, I'm going to say it, he does have a bit of a perk because, well, if he wants biological children and he can have them, his time's not really going to run out.
Yeah, I mean, I do, in a way, I like that he feels so strongly about it and that he has his mind made up. Because I think often, at least when I look at like people in my, I don't know, surroundings, that most of the time it's maybe the man who's a maybe, or who's like, oh, I'm fine, whatever. And then that makes me feel, and that might be wrong, but that makes me feel, is that because you know that it won't be your life that's impacted the most in most cases?
Yeah. I mean, they're not raised with like the clock is ticking. So,
No, exactly. And they also have been raised with the idea that you can still do all the fun things. You can still go out with friends. You can still, you know, have your career. You can still do whatever you want because, yeah, the missus will take care of it.
Yeah, and I feel like when people ask you, so when are you going to have children, or oh, are you going to change your mind? In like cliche situations, it's usually the mother-in-law, the mom, or one of the parents who asks you when you're going to have children, right? And they obviously went through it. But I guess what I want to say is it's not just a personal preference to have a child, right? It is influencing every aspect of your life, your career, your finances, your housing, anything. So people need to give other people a break if they do not want to answer the question, talk about the question for so many reasons. Because maybe some people are just very uncertain about family planning and they find it uncomfortable to talk about it. And that's perfectly valid. And maybe people just had a miscarriage and you don't know that, but you asking the question brings up really bad emotions for them. Maybe people can't have children. They just found out like this question is just being handled as how are you? How's your day going? Whereas I read somewhere asking someone about when you're going to have children, you should compare it to asking someone, so how was your tax return this year? Or why didn't you buy a bigger house? Like, it's the same principle. It's like a weird, uncomfortable question, and people should start seeing as one of them.
Yes. So, well, first of all, I think I have to give my family a little shout out here, which I know doesn't happen very often. But when it comes to this, they actually don't really pressure. They've actually never really pressured me like that. And I think my aunt is a single woman in her 50s and she is child free. And as far as I know, like my grandparents have never really said anything. Maybe because my mom, with her two children, just gave them a run for their money, and they were like, "It's fine if we don't have any more grandchildren." But actually, my great grandmother, who passed away last year, she once said to me, I don't see you as a family person. I just don't see it. And I was like, okay, so then what do you think? What do you see for me then? And she was like, you need to travel, do whatever you want, and fuck everything else. And this was a woman who was almost 90. My family has always kind of, if anything, they would always kind of jokingly, but also not really, be like, just stay single, don't get married, don't have children. And so, yeah, I'm actually quite, well, lucky maybe even in that way that there's no pressure from them on me. But I know people whose parents ask about it all the time, which is so incredibly annoying because I just also feel like, why are you doing this? As, like you said, a mother-in-law, why do you think that your child will then be like, you know what, yes, now that you said this, tomorrow I'm gonna start trying for a baby? Like, if people want children, they will take the necessary steps to try and have children. So stop saying things like, when are you going to give me grandchildren? It is not going to speed up that process, or at least not for the right reasons. And yes, that as well, we assume for some reason that if people want to get pregnant, then they will immediately get pregnant. That this is such a normal thing that will just work for everyone. And so then I also think if you don't stop making these comments and asking these questions for people who don't want children, because for someone like me, it's annoying. That's just it. It's just annoying and frustrating. But then at least do it for the people who are struggling with this, because for them, it's just heartbreaking and it's just very painful. I mean, I know someone who had a miscarriage on the day of a family gathering, which like is horrible enough as it is. So imagine then people asking you, okay, so when are you going to get pregnant? Like, I really am baffled how people do not realize how inappropriate that is. So I feel like if you don't know somebody's situation, and you never really do, unless you're in that relationship, you never really do know someone's situation. Don't don't just ask these things so flippantly.
Yeah, 100%. This is something I haven't prepared, so I don't know where I'm going to go with this thought right now. But I actually follow this woman on YouTube. I started following her years and years ago because she was like talking a lot about painful periods and how she's handling it. And like, yeah, that's why I started following her. And now she had a child and she's a solo mom. And I actually found that really cool that she was just going for it, because I think a lot of people would also struggle with it. Like, let's say you don't find the person you want to raise a child with, but you really, really, really want a child. I find it really cool that you just went for it. She is, I think, 25. It's called Precious Stars Flocks or something like that. It's called like that because she had a period equipment brand once. Anyway, and she has like adenomyosis. This is the first time I can properly say it, which is something like endometriosis, but you will at some point have to have a hysterectomy and your fertility could go down. So she decided, well, I always wanted children, so I'm just going to do it now. I'm okay with my money. My parents are here to support me. And then she got a sperm donor and now she's a baby. And I think kudos to her for knowing exactly what she wants and not letting anyone else be part of doing what she wants to do if she's in a privileged position to actually afford this. Yeah. I mean, she's also more on the asexual spectrum. So she was like, well, I don't actually think this would happen that way anyway. So I might as well get a donor.
Yeah.
I think that's very cool.
No, but yes, if you're if you can afford this, and if you are in that position where, yeah, why not? I have a friend who literally said, yeah, maybe I want children, but then I wouldn't want it with a partner because then you're stuck to that person forever. That's just not something I would want. I mean, fair enough.
That is so true. I mean, if you are if you are two people who are parents to a child, you will always have to see that person at some point, even if you separate.
Yeah. I did a couple of years ago. I was considering donating my eggs. I quickly found out that I wasn't allowed because I'm too fat and they look at your BMI, of course. But I told my grandmother this. I was like, yeah, I was considering this at some point. She lost it. She was like, oh, so you would just be okay with like, children running around, your children running around that you don't know. And I was like, yeah, but they would not be my children, though. They would not be. They would be the people's children who care for them and who are the parents. Like they would have nothing to do with me. Well, not nothing, but like, yeah, they would not be my children. But yeah, she was not happy about that.
Oh God. Yeah, I think that's why I'm not quite against adopting someone. I don't really need someone to be blood to see as family. I don't know. Like, I either have a connection with someone or I don't. I mean, with a child, I hopefully will have one if I adopt it. But yeah, I don't need to shoot it out of me to see it as my child, I think. I probably would like it better if it doesn't rip my bum. So...
Although I do, and this reminds me of we did speak about this recently, Khloe Kardashian. So I was watching the Kardashians, and she actually talks very openly about, so she had her first child biologically, and then she had a son via a surrogate, and she did openly talk about how that connection is not the same, which I can see. I can see that connection is not like having literally a person living inside of you for 9 months. I can see how it takes maybe more time, or that it's not the same. But then there's other people who don't have that. There's other people who say that they immediately felt like it was their child. So I don't know. I don't think you know beforehand, but then if you don't have both scenarios, then you also can't really compare anyway. So
yeah, but then another YouTuber, I'm gonna throw them all out today. I follow Helen Anderson, I think. She doesn't have children, but she was talking with her friend who has a child. And she was just having a conversation with her, and in that conversation, the friend who has the child said the child was born, but it just took her a while to actually like love the child. Like she said, I had the child and I immediately wanted to care and do everything for that child, but I didn't know that person basically, and it took her a while to love that child as a person and to actually have that intense bond. And I think it's really good that she speaks up about it. Like, of course you want to care for that little human, but it doesn't mean that you immediately bond with it if it's your, I mean, I think it makes sense to me that even if you give birth to it, there's like still a phase where you maybe sometimes need to build that connection.
Yeah, and I do think it's really good that different perspectives are being shared, because there can be that thing of like this massive taboo, especially around motherhood, that you can't share how difficult it is sometimes, or that you can't share that you're struggling with something, maybe like, yes, having a bond with your child. And I think that's definitely something that I think by not talking about it and making it such a taboo, that just makes it worse, I think, because then people just feel very alone with those feelings. So I definitely think that that's great.
Yeah, and it's also good as someone who doesn't have children. It's good to hear these things before you have them, and you can get all this kind of information. And when I was watching that, I keep watching birth vlogs. I don't know why. Just all the YouTubers I followed are having children now. So that's the YouTube videos they put out. They were saying they're so glad that other people are posting these stories online, like about birth, but also about how it's after, because you can get just so many different perspectives, and it just makes you feel less alone no matter which scenario you are then going through. Sometimes the internet has a good side.
Yes, sometimes.
Sometimes
it really does. Yeah, and well, where I do think there have to be more perspectives is in the mainstream media, because I have quite a few examples of when like I said earlier, when like the having children thing was or the decision to have them was definitely treated as like the only right decision. For example, this was taken quite literally in an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where Jake and Amy basically have like a debate. So he at some point says, I don't know if I want children. And then she's like, no, you're wrong. And I'm going to tell you you're wrong. And then they literally have even, I think they're in a hospital or something. And then they have their own little like stands and everything where they just give their arguments, pro and cons. And then eventually Amy wins and he's like, oh yeah, actually, yes, you're right. Like that makes perfect sense. Of course, this is the right decision. And then they do have a child, and that really rubbed me the wrong way, because I was like, if he
that's
doesn't,
not how it should work.
no. And then another show, The Big Bang Theory, which had more than one issue, I think. But two of the female leads, those characters, both of them did not want children. Like the character of Bernadette did not want children, and then she had like 4 or something, like 3 or 4 children. It became a running gag that she was pregnant again, and she did not want children. And then Penny also did not want children, and that was a whole thing as well in her relationship with Leonard, that she just didn't want it. And then she gets drunk and gets pregnant accidentally, and then she's like, well, whatever, I'll just keep it then, I guess. And again, so in that show it was just treated like, yeah, eventually they will do what's right and they will have children. And then again, my favorite show, they did not do this, so it's not the show's fault. But this is a show, Schitt's Creek, where actually the main character, or one of the main characters, it literally could not be made any more clear that this character does not want children. Daniel Levy's character, David, that he does not want children. That's just not him. And then afterwards, I was in a couple of these like fan groups, or I saw comments from fans who were like, oh, I really, that's the one thing that would have made it even better for me, is if he would have had a child at the end. And I was just like, and many people commented on it as well. And people were actually fighting in the comment sections, but because people were like, he doesn't want them, like that character does not want them. So even with a show like that just cannot make it any more clear, people are still like, Yeah, but is it really a happy end if they don't end up having children? And that is just so frustrating to me. We
Yeah.
just need to start not having children. We need to start treating that as just as valid of a choice.
Yeah. And it's not so people saying they don't want children and then their minds are being changed or they just have children anyway. That doesn't, we're not saying that. I assume it's both of us, but we're not saying that then those parents are bad parents. I think they are great parents. They can still be great parents. Most likely are great parents, I hope. And love their child just as much as someone who plans to have children. But there's a chance that it just goes south then because you never really wanted it. And then you maybe start resenting your partner for talking you into that. It doesn't mean that you then resent your child, but you could resent your partner. You could change the whole relationship. It's just like, yeah, I just thought I mentioned that as well.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
different situations, and it can be that that was just not a plan, or that you were a maybe, or whatever, and then it just happens, and then you decide, no, I do want this. Of course, that's 100% valid. But and of course, these can be incredible parents, but
Yeah.
yeah, my issue is merely with the the whole thing around, yeah, but don't
There's
you
only
realize
one
that
way. Yeah,
this is the right way? Yes.
I agree. And you know, one thing, so I am like I said, most likely, but not 100% sure kind of person when it's about children. There's one thing that I am actually scared about, and that is not, and that might sound really selfish to some people, but one of my fears about having children is how the relationship with your partner will change. Like, I love my relationship as it is, and the time we have for each other and how we can make each other our priorities. But having a child will inevitably change your relationship. And that's just something I believe is true. Please try to convince me otherwise if it's not. And maybe it will even change your relationship to the better and you create that really strong bond. I believe that can happen as well. But I like my relationship how it is. And then when you have a child or children, there's more stresses to everything. And yes, it can test your relationship. How much can you go through? That can be great. But I feel like, I don't know, that's just something that will worry me if we decide to have children. Like, how will it impact us as us? Because I think we are quite great together. So I don't know, something coming in between almost, if you want to put it the brutal way.
Yeah. We mentioned this in our last episode as well, that maybe some people get married because they feel like the relationship is a little bit rocky and that will make it better. I think sometimes maybe people do that with children as well, which is maybe not always the best thing to do. Because, yeah, like you said, if anything, I think it puts so much more pressure on the relationship. So I think it's basically what you said last week, having these conversations, and just even more so than with marriage, just discussing, okay, what will this look like? And yeah, I think you're right that it changes your relationship, but then I also think if you both really go into it knowing, like, okay, this is how strong our relationship is, and this is, we can rely on each other and everything, then it can probably just add an incredible extra dynamic to it. But yeah, you maybe also have to actively make sure that you don't lose sight of each other or something. I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah,
But
it
yeah,
can go both ways. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying this will happen. I'm just saying it's something that can impact your romantic relationship. And I don't know. At this point, I don't want to risk it.
okay, so then can I ask you a big question now? Because you asked me a big question last week.
Oh,
you
God.
you asked me why I wanted to get married. So why would you say that you're more a maybe than a no? Because earlier you also said that you currently don't have those feelings.
So your question is why I want children, basically. Yeah. Okay, this is going to sound horrible or like braggy or like full of myself. But I think I would just be a really good mom. And I think I would actually enjoy it down the line when I've sorted my own shit out, like where I'm actually gonna work and I know where I'm working, but like how is my future career gonna look like and where will I live? And when I have those big questions settled, I think I would be ready to have a child. And why I want to have it, well, see, that's the thing where I don't think I can justify why I would want to have my own biological child, because I'm not that keen on being pregnant and going through all that stuff. I could more tell you why I want to adopt, because there are just so many children out there who have no one, and I would just love to make someone feel loved and give them a home. And I feel like that can be said about having your own biological child, but for me personally, it makes more sense to say it about a child that really needs it instead of creating a new one that then will also obviously get it from me. But I feel like there's more value to it if I give it to a child that really needs to be loved and needs a home, and I can just be that for them.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that makes sense.
Also, that's another thing. I have really bad periods, so I have to take my pill to not have bad periods, to make them less bad. Trying to get pregnant would literally, I would have to not have a job and just be able to be at home and lie down for as long as it takes for me to get pregnant. Like, yeah.
Well, there was that one doctor who told you you'll get pregnant.
He wasn't a doctor. He was a pharmaceutical advisor.
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, he was a pig.
Well, he also was an idiot.
Yeah.
He told me, because I was like, oh, if I take the pill, like, what's the breast cancer risks? And he's like, you don't have to worry about that. You're like, at that point, I was 26, 27. He's like, you're probably going to have children in 2 years anyway. And I was like, oh, that's a great medical advice. Thank you. But I also had doctors, when I asked them, what can I do about my period pain? Where they're like, well, the chances are that it all gets better once you had a child. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But also not. Like, I feel like that's a big risk to take.
I know. I was like, can they give it back if it doesn't work?
Well, that's an episode in itself, I feel like. Periods and the way those get treated in the medical world.
Or not treated.
Yeah. I think, I just wanted to say about like those questions and people just asking all of this. I think, well, I just asked you as well, but we're having a conversation about it.
Well, it was within the topic, and I already mentioned things.
Yeah, and I do, so I do think there's a difference between like having a conversation amongst friends, because I have these conversations with friends sometimes when I also ask people like, oh, is that something that you would one day want or something? But I think that's different than when it's kind of implied like, okay, so, what's the deal? When are you having babies? I think that's just very different. If you know that someone is not, like the friends I have those conversations with, I know that they are not currently trying to do any of that. So then it's a thing of like, is that something that you would want in your life at some point? But that's different than being like, so you got married a year ago. When is this happening?
Yeah. Just a pure expectation that this is a given thing anyway. So when?
Yeah. Kind of like that scene in Sex and the City where Carrie and Big meet someone and she's like, oh, no, it's just us. We're not having children. And that woman is
and she was shocked.
Yeah.
She's shocked. She leaves them. And then I'm just thinking, that's another thought. That's the thought I had when I saw that scene for the first time. It's like, can a couple together not just be enough? Like, can some people just not imagine just being the two of you because you actually just like how your life is? Like, you don't have to get married to have a child. You can't just be in a relationship to have a child. You can't just be with someone because you just really like being with them and doing the things you're doing.
I know, but there is that idea that then that would just be the cherry on top. Like, that would make everything a little bit better, even though.
Well, I'm getting a dog, and I think it will that will do for me. Will do it for me for now.
Yeah, but it's exactly what you say. I mean, people can find their, I don't know, satisfaction in so many different ways and can get out of life what they want in so many different ways. So to decide what somebody else should want is just, I don't know. It's very odd to me, because that video we both watched of, again, these YouTubers, it was actually Hannah Witten, Lena Norms, who we've mentioned 100 times already on this podcast, and Lucy Moon. So 3 friends, and then Hannah has a baby, Lena doesn't want children, and Lucy is a maybe. And they ask each other these questions because they've been friends for 10 years. And then at some point, there's the question, like, do you guys, Lena asks something, I think, of like, do you guys think it's a shame that I will never have children? And then Lucy says, yes, actually I do, because I think you're an incredible person and I would like to have one more of you. And then Lena says, yeah, but it would not be me. Like it would be a completely different person. And that's so true as well, because I feel like that is something that people think as well with people that they like. Then they're like, oh, but you're both so nice and you're both such good, smart, whatever people. So a child would be that you would have such a great child, but you don't know that. You don't know that. I have watched too much true crime about children who turn out to be psychopaths.
Who have perfectly nice parents as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and also I was a horrible child. Like I was loud, I was screaming, I lost it during my whole few years of puberty.
I can see that.
And I have been wished by my mom and my grandma that they want me to once have a child like me. So I know what trouble it can be. So I don't know. I don't know if I want myself as a child. I don't think so. I was still a lot to handle.
Yeah. Okay. So for advice, I would say, well, we don't have any because we don't have children. But I would say no matter what you decide to do or not to do, you do you, and don't apologize for anything or don't feel like you have to go in a certain direction. And then also, I think the main thing that we discussed here, the main like source of frustration is don't continuously ask other people about it, especially if you don't know their situation. You will hear when people are pregnant and when they want you to know, or when they're having a baby in whatever way that they prefer. Until that has happened, just don't. Just keep your mouth shut. It's kind of like asking someone if they've it's worse. I would say it's a lot worse, but it's kind of like asking someone if they've lost weight or commenting on people's weight. I think, yeah, this is just even more invasive. I think just no, just stop it.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's like asking people, oh, why didn't you buy a bigger house? Because maybe you just don't have the financial needs right now to have a child. Or, yeah, you never know. You never know what's behind. It's kind of, it's just I think it's a private thing.
It is a private thing. It is. All of that, I don't know, for people like me who are already a no, all that does is make me be even more like, well, if you're going to keep commenting on this, I will definitely not have children.
Yeah, and I think that's another piece of advice. If someone says they don't want them, or they just say, I'm not going to have it, then just accept it. You don't need to push for it. You don't need to ask them to change their mind. You don't need to let them know, oh, that will change in a few years, or when you meet the right someone. Just let it be, honestly. Well, should we move on to our recommendation section? Did you bring us some book suggestions today?
I did bring some books. The first one is one that I know we have both read. It's Olive by Emma Gannon, which I think is just the perfect nonfiction book about this topic. I think no matter where you are with this, or what choices you have made or you want to make, or what situation that you're in, because it is about a friend group essentially. Well, Olive is the main character and she has just split. Her relationship has just ended because her partner wants children and she does not, and that's that's just why they broke up. And she has a friend group. I think it's 4 women. And basically, they're all in very different situations when it comes to wanting children or having children. So she knows that she doesn't want children, but then her best friend has, I think, 2 or 3 children. And then they have another friend who's going through IVF and then is really struggling with that. So you also see the dynamic between the friend who has children, and it seems, from the other person's perspective to be so effortless and everything, and then someone who is struggling to get pregnant and wants it more than anything. So you also see the dynamic between those two friends, and basically just how all of them deal with the fact that their friends are just in very different places. And I thought that was great. And it's also just kind of it's not a heavy read or anything. It's also still just, I would say, just a relaxing read. And then another one is A Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. If you're into an absurd story, because this woman, and this is not a spoiler, this is the blurb, she turns into a dog, basically. But it is criticism, it does criticize how women are being, or how mothers are being treated, and how we just put so many expectations on mothers. But that reminds me of one thing I still wanted to say. When we were talking about how women get treated versus how men get treated, there was also another YouTuber I follow. Her name's Nikki, and she has 3 children. And she recently posted something where she was like, okay, all of the messages that you guys are sending me now, I'm going to need you. And she actually tagged her husband, and she was like, I'm going to need you to ask him this next time he leaves the house. So she went to, I think, a Beyonce concert with her best friend, and they went to Vegas together. And apparently she got hundreds of messages that were like, where are your children? Who's taking care of your children? What's happening to your children? And she said, she asked him, her husband, if he had ever had that question, and he said, no, never. It's never happened to me. So,
I have another also a YouTuber I watch, and she lives in Florida actually, and she then went on the 4-day trip to the UK, to London, with a friend, and the shit she got from people in the comments, because her son is almost 2, and they were bombarding her with, "You're leaving your son alone with his dad. Why are you just leaving them? How can you just go on a holiday without your whole family?" I'm like, Jesus Christ, let a woman have a trip with her friend. It's just 4 days.
I know, but there is such an unbelievable double standard. That also reminds me of, there is that couple on 90 Day Fiance, which is where I get all my information. That couple, Yara and Jovi, and he has a job where he's just away from home for weeks on end. She's from Ukraine, and then he's American, and they live in the US now together. And he's just away from home for a very long time. And then I think in those situations, well, maybe not always, maybe I'm now generalizing or something, but I feel like if that's a man who needs to do that for his job, then it is still oh, well, it's not ideal, but it's his job. He needs to make money. He needs to provide, If a woman would do that, if a mom would have a baby that's a couple of months old and would be like, yeah, but my job is just that I am away from home for 2 months every time, she would get dragged. She would get ripped apart. And that's just really not okay, in my opinion. And then the last book that I do have to say, I have it and I want to read it soon, but I haven't actually read it yet. So if you do read it and you don't like it, then, well, it's not my fault because I haven't read it yet. But it does seem very interesting, and I think a book that would probably offer some fresh perspectives on this topic. It's called Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. And it is basically about a couple, trans people, and they then break up, and then one of the partners has a baby with someone else. By some kind of sequence of events, they end up raising a child, the 3 of them. So yeah, I think, and then also, so two of the main characters are then trans, and yeah, I think that will probably just, like I said, offer some fresh voices on that topic as well. So yeah, I'll let you know when I've read it.
Yes, please do. So the series I have for as my recommendation is an Apple TV series. It's called Platonic. It's with Rose Byrne and Seth Rogen. I think Seth Rogen was also a writer or director on it. And well, it's quite funny. It's like a nice comfort watch, but it gives you nice perspectives as well. So they are two middle-aged friends, and she is a stay-at-home mom. She has like 3 children, and she was a lawyer before she decided to be a stay-at-home mom. She's married also to a lawyer, and then there's Seth Rogen. He plays her friend, been friends for years. He is just getting divorced. He doesn't have children. He owns a bar in downtown LA with some friends, and he's a beer brewing expert. And the lives basically couldn't be more opposite. And it's just, yeah, it's just nice to see the different struggles that come with both situations in a way. And Rose, well, she's not called Rose, that's the actress's name, but she also at some point tries to go back to work, and it shows those kinds of struggles and how it all works out within their marriage, but also how she sometimes admires Seth for his freedom. And yeah, just go and watch. It's a good show.
Oh, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it, so yeah.
Also, Seth Rogen is like teen blonde in
Oh,
that
okay.
show, and I'm vibing it. And I know people probably don't watch it. I don't think our listeners are watching it much, but Vanderpump Rules, there's this one guy, his name is Tom Schwartz. He's my favorite. And he and Seth Rogen kind of look the same in the series. They dress the same. They give the same vibe. I love it. Anyway.
Okay. No, I'm adding that to my to watch list. The it's part of that made me think of, and this, well, it's very different. It went a completely different way, what you were saying. But I'm just going to leave you all with a very nice story. So my hairdresser, Bradley, he lives with his best friend, and they've been living together for a good minute, for I want to say like 10 years or something. And Bradley, my hairdresser, has always known that he wants children at some point, that he wants to adopt or go the surrogate route. And so because they're best friends and they live together, they have also discussed the option of potentially just having a baby together, the two of them, because they are so close, and then they're both gay men, and so then they could raise a child together. That was kind of what they were discussing sometimes, but so they were living together as best friends, and now they're together. They became the ultimate example of like best friends who then realize that they actually like each other. And it's funny because he told me that over the years their friends were always like, oh, you two, you like each other, you should be together. And he was always like, you're just saying that because we're two gay men, you're being so stereotypical, don't be like this. But so it actually happened between them. And so now it just all works out because now they can go through with that baby plan as a romantic couple as well. And now they also just live together already, which is a bit weird because we did discuss that. So previously they both had different sofas, and now they just moved to one sofa and everything, and also into one room, of course. So now the other room basically just became the guest room. Yeah, I thought it was such a great story when he told me that.
It's a really cute story. I love it. Yeah, when I started watching that series, I did think it's gonna go that way. Well, now I spoiled everyone. Well, no, it's never even implied that that's gonna happen, really. So yeah. And like I said, I only had one recommendation, so that was me.
Hey. Well, that was it then. That's us done.
I am starving.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I'm going immediately. I'm preheating my oven. I'm throwing a pizza in there. And then it's time for Robbie, I think. Yeah, I know it now. I want to watch Robbie.
I'm waiting for my boyfriend, who I'm starting to think doesn't love me because I'm starving and he's not cooking food.
He's not.
Well, he's not even home yet. He hasn't even
Oh,
done the food shop.
oh my God. Okay.
Okay, so before we wrap up, we want to say a big thank you, as always, to all of you who made it to the end of this week's episode. And we hope you enjoyed it, maybe heard something you could relate to. And yeah, remember, we will be back next week with a brand new episode. Actually, next week is going to be one of our MIDS hole / internet rabbit hole kind of episodes. So I'm looking forward to that.
Millennial mess.
Thank you. I actually forgot how we call it.
And the best part, as always, is that we want to hear from you. We know that everyone has their own unique stories to share, so don't be shy. Connect with us on Instagram at We Are Millennial Musings, or on TikTok, because we're on TikTok now. We're hip like that. Where we're called We're Millennial. No, just Millennial Musings. Dear God, you'll find us. So we're. Yeah. Oh my God. I'm going to stop talking. Just message us, okay?
Absolutely. As you can tell, we're lightheaded because we are hungry. So, well, until next week, stay curious and yeah, send us your stories over. Bye.
Goodbye. I'm broken.